I also want to thank another Texan, Ambassador Ron Kirk, for his terrific work as our United States Trade Representative. Former Senator Sam Nunn for his lifetime of service. I want to mention particularly Senator Nunn's visionary work on nuclear nonproliferation. And we have two outstanding members of Congress who are here with us today, Chet Edwards and Sheila Jackson Lee. So, where's Chet? Chet's over there. I want to recognize Melody Barnes, Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, for outstanding work on service and many other issues. Stand up, Melody. I want to thank Michelle Nunn, the CEO of Points of Light, as well as Neil Bush, Chairman of the Board, for their wise leadership. I want to congratulate Mallory Myers, today's Daily Point of Light Award winner, and commend her for her tireless work to pulling together the big event, which I know is no easy task. And I understand that this event is just one of the countless ways that students at this university are giving back to this community, from tutoring children and building homes, to raising money to fight cancer and AIDS, to continuing A&M's proud tradition of military service. So, I can see why President Bush chose to locate his library at this school. What you all are doing right here is precisely what he was talking about when he called for those 1,000 points of light and became the first president to create a White House office devoted solely to promoting volunteerism. It's a vision that's changed lives across this country, including that of a young woman who went to work for an organization called Public Allies to prepare young people for public service careers, an organization initially funded by the Bush administration. And her experience there inspired her to devote her own life to serving others. And that young woman happens to be my wife, Michelle Obama. And I've been instructed to convey her gratitude today as well. But here's the thing. George Bush isn't just a president who promoted the ethic of service long before it was fashionable. He's a citizen whose life has embodied that ethic. From his daring service as a Navy pilot during World War II, enlisting the day he turned 18, to his time in Congress, at the CIA, and as UN ambassador, vice president, and president. He easily could have chosen a life of comfort and privilege. And instead, time and again, when offered a chance to serve, he seized it. It was second nature to him, the continuation of a proud family tradition that he and Mrs. Bush clearly passed on to their children and grandchildren, and one which he's carried on throughout his quote-unquote retirement. How's that working out, Ms. Bush? Spends it working tirelessly to help others, without fanfare or any expectation or desire for recognition. Though I do recall one endeavor of his that actually drew quite a bit of attention. That was back in 2005. And some of you may remember this. He and President Clinton had agreed to come together to raise money for the nations devastated by the tsunami that killed nearly 230,000 people in Asia. And that partnership between these two presidents would continue in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. At first, longtime friends and aides to both of them were suspicious. Let's tell the truth now. They were convinced that the other guy was using their guy to burnish his own reputation. That's how staffers are. But then, when one operative expressed his concern to President Clinton, the president sharply rebuked him, replying, "This is much more important than politics. This is much more important than politics." That's the conviction that drew these two outstanding leaders, once fierce adversaries, to join forces. The belief that there's some things that are beyond politics, that there's no place for partisanship when a great American city is underwater, that the R or D next to your name is irrelevant when nations in crisis need the world's help, that certain moments call on us to stop the back and forth and the bickering, to forget the old rivalries, and embrace a common purpose that is bigger than our differences. And while you might not always know it from watching the cable news shows or listening to folks on the radio, I think it's clear that we stand at one of those moments. We're seeing turmoil in our economy that's left many people wondering whether their kids will have the same opportunities that they had to pursue their dreams. We face threats to our health, our climate, and of course our security that have left many of our young people wondering what kind of future they'll be leaving for their own kids. And if anyone here thinks that our government has all the solutions, President Bush and I will be the first to tell you that you'll be sorely disappointed. Government can build the best schools with the best teachers, but we can't run the PTA or chaperone those field trips or mentor those kids after school or have them sit down and do their homework at night. We can pass the most comprehensive health reform bill, but Congress can't be on the ground in our communities caring for the sick and helping people lead healthier lives. Government can give our troops the equipment they need and the pay and benefits that they have earned, and nobody's working harder at doing that than Secretary Gates. But it can't be there to offer a home-cooked meal to a military family stretched thin, or to make sure our veterans get the respect and appreciation they deserve in their communities when they come home. In the end, when it comes to the challenges we face, the need for action always exceeds the limits of government. While there's plenty that government can do and must do to keep our families safe and our planet clean and our markets free and fair, there's a lot that government can't and shouldn't do. And that's where active, engaged citizens come in. That's the purpose of service in this nation. And that's the point I want to emphasize today, that service isn't separate from our national priorities or secondary to our national priorities. It's integral to achieving our national priorities. It's how we will meet the challenges of our time. To this day, despite all the evidence to the contrary, there's still folks with this notion out there that, well, service is nice, but it's not really essential. It's something you do once in a while to fulfill a requirement or to fulfill yourself, or for a year or two after college to put off getting a real job. Huh? I'm talking to you. The notion that the real work of change in this country is done by people with fancy titles and big offices out of Washington, D.C. But history tells a very different story. It's the story of patriots who set forth the ideals that animate our democracy and all those who fought and died for those ideals. It's the story of women who reached for the ballot and people who stood up and sat in and marched for justice. The story of firefighters and police officers who rushed to those burning towers, and ordinary people who rushed to the aid of a flooded American city. That's always been the story of this nation. The story of those who stepped forward in our darkest hours to serve it. Those who rose to answer the defining questions of their time. Colony or country? Free or half free? Separate but equal, or truly equal? Those folks weren't in it for the money. Those folks were volunteers. Their service wasn't extra. It was the work that changed this country.